I came into the Christian faith through the back door of science. Through those things, I was brought to the idea of there's an intelligence behind this. I went on a long, crazy journey trying to find that intelligence, and he found me. So along with that, there's a confidence that goes with the wonder. And the wonder is very childlike, and the confidence is very adult-like. It all blends together to make a wondrous, childlike adult who's most virtuous and will have a wonderful effect upon our culture.
As Christians, we know we're called to live lives that are different from the world around us. This isn't aimless, but purposeful. And as parents, we know this to be true for our children and our approach to education as well. So how do we do this? How can we be thoughtfully and intentionally different in education, parenting, community, and culture? Subjects like math and science seem to rule the day in modern culture. But how can we approach and understand these subjects as God intended from a Christian worldview? And where do they fit in the overall scope of a Trinity education? In today's episode, we're joined by members of Trinity's science and mathematics faculty for a thought-provoking discussion that continually points us to the Creator in our exploration of these subjects, with an inside look at what students receive in the classroom on a daily basis. Welcome to Different by Design. Welcome to Different by Design. I'm your host, Matt Dixon, and today's guests include Trinity's head of school, Liz Caddo. And today is exciting because we're going to be talking with a couple of our faculty members, Dr. Mark Phillips, who is our chair of theology and science, and Sally Leon, who is our incoming chair of mathematics. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Well, it's always good to know background context. I love the opportunity for you to share that with our listeners. So for both your perspectives, I know you've been here for a few years. Could you just share how long you've been at Trinity, what brought you to Trinity in the first place? I'd love to hear that. And to be honest, I don't fully know those stories from either one of you, so would love to know.
All right. Well, this is my 5th year at Trinity, and I came during the COVID crazy time in 2020. When I was 18 years old, I came to know the Lord, and I was in my freshman year of college at the time, studying to be a biomedical engineer. So I really wanted to know, what does the Lord want me to do with my life? So I did a second year, again, studying math and science with the idea of becoming a biomedical engineer, but also being open to the possibility of other things. As I was praying and really seeking what the Lord wanted, he led me to Bible college. And so I went to Bible college, and at that college, there wasn't an option for me to get an engineering degree. So I studied secondary education, and I had all these beautiful math and science credits under my belt. So I came out of Bible college as a secondary teacher with math and science as my emphases, and have been teaching math and science for decades now. I had been teaching for a number of years at another school in the area. Working there involved a rather lengthy commute that could be unpredictable at times, could be as short as 55 minutes or as long as 2.5 hours. Depending on what incidents had happened on freeways. And so I began looking for another place for me to use my gifts in a Christian environment and possibly shorten my commute.
Yes. I came here in 2011, and in 2010, I would not have imagined myself doing this. And the reason I say that is my background was more as a scientist before I became a believer. I was an analytical biochemist and animal surgeon at Vanderbilt, and I got saved there, which is a long story in and of itself, and immediately wanted to study theology, which I did. I left the lab and went to do graduate work in theology, and ended up in both church ministry and educational missionary work. But it was mostly at seminaries around the world doing short-term modular courses and that kind of thing. And I was actually on sabbatical when a friend of a friend of a friend told me about this need they had at a international Christian school in Caracas, Venezuela. And would I be interested in going down there for a semester to close out the year in chemistry and physical science? Because for some reason, the missionary teacher down there was not able to return. And I thought, well, I'm on sabbatical. That sounds like a fun little adventure. So my wife and I went down there, and I really enjoyed it. I had never really done teaching at the secondary level like that very much, and really enjoyed being able to bring God and science together, and ended up starting to write curriculum as I was doing it. Well, the principal there, because I had been trained at Oxford and there was some classical elements that are still present there, the principal there said, you seem to enjoy this. You ought to look into this new movement that I heard about called the classical Christian movement. I thought, well, that's interesting. And he actually knew about Trinity. He said, yeah, you should go talk to these people at this school there. I think it's going to become one of the flagships. I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. And so upon finishing there, really came to Trinity just to kind of look into it and see what was going on, and gave a guest lecture there. And the students were so responsive and so bright, and I'd never seen anything like this. These are brighter than most of the seminary students I've seen. And before you knew it, we found ourselves here, caught up in the vortex of Liz Caddo and the classical Christian movement, and came here to really build this program. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling them, I'd be excited to do this, but I really don't want to call it the science department. I want to call it the theology and science department, because the two really coexist. And I think we want to make that statement. And they were all on board. And so came down here and have been here ever since.
That's great. Liz, I'm sure you remember when both of them came.
Oh, I do.
And I'm sure those were integral hires for us, for our community, and for really what we see today and what we're offering our students.
Yes, very much
math
so.
and science and all of that. So
very much so. And both have been a significant blessing to our community.
Well, I'm looking forward to this conversation because I think for many who look at Trinity, maybe who are currently here or are interested in this kind of education for their child, when we look at our culture today, science, math, STEM, STEAM, I think they keep adding letters to it sometimes.
Yes.
And the point is that this becomes really a hot button issue. How do we as a school address these things? We see the growth of, it's constantly in our faces of technology and artificial intelligence and all of this that is in our world today. And how will a Trinity student be equipped? How will a Trinity student be able to engage and be successful for whatever the Lord might call them to in these fields? Because, for us as a school, I think sometimes there's this misconception that maybe these aren't priorities for us, or we really just don't take them that seriously. And so when we look at something from that perspective, you're the ones who are living this on a daily basis, not only developing the curriculum, but I think more importantly, you are seeing the kind of student that Trinity is producing. You're seeing them engage in this realm of science and mathematics and logic and all of those kinds of things. What do you see? How would you respond to someone that maybe has that misconception? How do you think science uniquely fits at a place like Trinity? So I know I just asked multiple questions. Those are loaded things, but would love to hear kind of your responses to that.
Oh, well, let's go back to the first two chapters of Genesis. And how did God create? He used words. He spoke, and it was so, and it was good. And so our emphasis on the humanities and on the written word is totally appropriate because he is the Logos. And so we want to have that as a huge emphasis. But let's look a little bit closer. How did he make the universe operate? It operates on the basis of some really beautiful and precise mathematical relationships. So while he used words to create, he used math and science to cause it to actually function. And so later on in Genesis, we're commanded to subdue and have dominion over the creation. It's fulfillment of the dominion mandate in my view. So I think it fits very well in the classical education scheme of things because it marries the humanities with the actual way the creation operates.
Yes, indeed. A mission is what you set out to do. A vision is what you hope is the result. And so the mission of the Department of Theology and Science is to offer this integrated approach of the scientific disciplines with theology so that the students see the hand of God in everything they're studying. And so that's what we set out to do. So the students will learn the scientific disciplines, but they won't yield to scientism, this belief that science is the ultimate authority. The vision we have is to produce these young men and women who do know science, but don't yield to scientism, and that their scientific knowledge they get here and their scientific skills will be a part of their overall apologetic life, their overall evangelical life, that not only are science and religion, Christian religion, not in conflict, they are really very mutually dependent upon one another. We would not have modern science without its theological basis. It was birthed in Christianized Europe, which is one of the things we teach very early on at the rhetoric level here.
Yeah, and understanding all aspects of that and the historical context,
yes,
which is important, because I think many today lose that aspect of it and assume the study of science just appeared, and there was no philosophy or there was no contextual piece to that.
Right, they believe there was this conflict between scientists and Scripture, and the exact opposite was true. Scientists were looking to Scripture, which told them in Jeremiah, there are these fundamental laws of the universe, and they're very excited about that. We can actually study and mathematize what we observe.
So with that in mind, what would you both say, from your perspective, the end goal for students studying science and math here at Trinity, and it's an intentional difference? How would this differ from, say, other schools when we're looking at what our end result would be, what we hope to produce in these students in the study of science and mathematics?
As is the case with art, we don't do art for its utility. We do art because it's a way for humans to flourish. And I would say the same is true for studying math and science. We don't really, at their core, learn and study and understand more and more about the world around us to use things or for what it can do for us, so much as it's what we do as humans. We are made in the image of this infinite creator God, and we, in order to flourish, we explore, we learn, we grow, we add to our understanding. So I would say my number one goal for my students would be that they would stand in awe and wonder at the marvels of our infinite creator revealed to us through his creation. But then secondarily, I would say I want them to realize that the scientific method isn't just something that we do in a science class or in a STEM profession. It's how we live life. I call it being awake when you play this game. My students hear me say that all the time. You got to be awake when you play this game. What I mean by that is, are you actually taking in? Are you present? Are you making connections in your mind with previously acquired knowledge? And are you synthesizing all of these different things that you're learning, that you're being exposed to? The phrase, gotta be awake when you play this game, came to me as a child, was what my brothers used to say to me after they had just thrown something at me that I wasn't ready for. So they would say...
Which I'm guessing happened a lot.
I have 5 brothers. Yeah. Yes, you got to be awake when you play this game. What is it that you're discovering about what we're focusing on right now? And how does it connect to previously acquired understanding? And that's where teaching them logic in the 8th grade helps them in that regard, because it's helping them to think well, sort of like combing the knots out of your brain, and being able to see things sometimes before they're even there, because you can chart your course. You can make the connections between this is where I am, this is where I need to be, and these are the logical steps that connect me from here to there. And that's a really important part of our science education, is that they do get to learn logic in the 8th grade. And then they not only apply that in their rhetoric in the upper school, but also in their science.
And indeed, and along with that great idea of maintaining wonder, a childlike approach to observing God's creation. We remember what Christ said when they were trying to keep the children from him. These are such as the ones who are in heaven. It's their wonder. And we want to maintain that. And along with that, there's a strong sense of the apologetic of science. I have a passion for this personally because I came in to the Christian faith through the back door of science. Through those things, I was brought to the idea of there's an intelligence behind this, and went on a long, crazy journey trying to find that intelligence, and he found me, thank the Lord, and I found myself at the foot of the cross. So along with that, there's a confidence that goes with the wonder, and the wonder is very childlike, and the confidence is very adult-like. And when you add the beautiful idea of virtue, wisdom, purpose, and courage from the humanities readings, it all blends together to make a wondrous, childlike adult who's most virtuous and will have a wonderful effect upon our culture.
Sally, your comment in particular reminds me of probably one of the most unhelpful charts I saw as a high school student, which was one of those charts that's in a math or science room, and it says what the concept was and what career I would use that in. Because what did that tell me? Oh, I'm not going to be that, so I don't need this. And in the sense of, I think in general, we have that hope, right, Liz? The hope for our students is in who we're producing. It's not to get that job or that college or whatever it might be. That's a natural byproduct of who they are and who they become and everything that they go through. But that is not the end goal. It's a natural byproduct of that. So I loved what you had to say in that sense of who God has made us to be. And as a result, this is just what we do as humans, knowing that, yeah, there are some practical realities to those things. But if we lose the heart, if we forget why we are pursuing these things in the first place, to be honest, that's where you get to some of our culture at large and what you see. And people who are pursuing these things devoid of God, with worthless pursuits.
What I appreciate in particular about our entire team, but in this case, our math and science team, is Mrs. Leon and Dr. Phillips reflect the passion at which all of our math and science faculty approach that which they are imparting to or speaking about with our students. And our students are seeing the connection, one, not only to what they're learning or the particular concept, but where God fits in with all of that. And they trust that it's real because those around them believe it.
Indeed.
With their whole being as well. And it makes sense to them. And I appreciate that in particular about when we speak about what we're doing as a school, that we're building the scaffolding for our students and their minds and where they can take things. And all of it is, the foundation is who we are in Christ. And it's really reflected well in our math and science.
Enthusiasm is such a wonderful word in the sciences, in math and science. It comes from the Greek in theos, which means in God. So when you're enthusiastic about studying his creation, it's a form of worship. You're in God at that point.
Absolutely.
You're celebrating and you're thanking him. Just today, the chem students are taking a kinetics test, asking them, how does kinetics reflect God? I prayed for them. Before every test, we always pray that this is more than just getting through a course to finish your work here and you get into the college you want to and the job you want. There's so much more going on. Those, as you said, Dr. Dixon, those are byproducts. The enthusiasm means you are in God. You're worshiping God when you're studying these things and seeing the beauty in them, because truth is absolutely beautiful.
I'm curious from a scientific mathematics standpoint, we know this is the overarching goal and purpose, but when we look specifically at science and math, what type of skills or characteristics would you say are the kinds of things we're hoping to instill in students? Because I think we all know the reality that as we go on, I'm not going to remember every little thing from that class and from that test and that thing. Yet we are hoping to produce, based on certain characteristics, again, or skill sets or principles that guide us that we hope then will stay with our students. What would, if we kind of get down to that level, what do you see? What do you hope for? How are we implementing that?
Yeah, well, I would say, and I teach the AP chemistry class at Trinity, and what I really hope for in those students is that they learn collaboration instead of competition. Because, of course, I'm going to get the cream of the crop, and the most highly motivated students are the ones who are willing to take the risk of a challenge like AP chemistry. And unfortunately for many of them, as honors students, they've never been able to see themselves grow because everything has always been effortlessly easy for them, academically speaking. And so the other major quality that I hope that they get from taking my class is the quality of resilience, because nobody finds AP chemistry effortlessly easy. It is a challenge for all of them, and they get slapped down by the rigor of the course. And for some honor students, they don't know what to do when they don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And some of them, I've had conversations in the past with students who were so troubled by the grade they were earning that they really were having a crisis. They didn't know what would happen if they got a B. Mm. And I remember having a conversation with a student saying, well, the sun would come up the next day. Mm. Okay. And what I really hope that our students are learning in, especially the more rigorous science and math that we offer at Trinity, is the characteristic of resilience of, okay, that didn't go well. All right, let's get back up and give it the old college try again.
Well, it was interesting in a recent podcast that we did with a couple of alumni who have gone on to do engineering. One of Gus Castillo's comments was, don't be afraid to fail. You won't know unless you try. And it's okay because through failure, you learn how to do it better the next time. And Mrs. Leon, one of the things that I appreciate in particular about your class, and in particular AP Chem, is the way that you help the students see that we learn through collaboration and through relationship.
Yes.
And we learn from one another that way. Mm-hmm. And I love when you do your big potlucks.
We call it the covenant lunch.
Yes.
And chili's always involved.
Yes. That you do. And the students love that. They've experienced something hard they've done together, and then they celebrate.
Yes. And we have a great community in that class. We really do.
Yes.
So for sure, resilience, playfulness. I hope that my students are getting this quality of we're not just nose to the grindstone. We are engaged in collaboration, play, community. We're learning resilience. We're learning to care about other people's progress as much as we care about our own. Mm-hmm. And in the process, gaining confidence. I feel as if young people are under the mistaken impression that confidence happens because everyone is telling you they believe in you. This is not the pathway to confidence, in my opinion. The pathway to confidence is to step outside of the safe space, take a risk, realize that in taking that risk, whether you were successful or whether you were not successful, it was a growing experience. And you gain confidence by stepping out of the guaranteed safe circumstance and taking a risk and learning from that. You also are engaged in creativity when you're doing those things, and you're drawing upon your own resources and creating, and you're learning to think broadly and not narrowly. And that's what I'm hoping that my students and all of our students who are in the upper levels of math and science are gaining in our classes.
That's wonderful. Thomas Edison, he said, those were not failures. I've merely discovered 10,000 ways a light bulb will not work. And I think that's the wonderful attitude of resilience that you're talking about, Sally, that we hope will be part of the vision of what happens, is that they understand that difficult, challenging is not bad. It is good, and it helps to shape the character. And that's part of what goes on here in math and science.
Yeah, and I always tell them when they're doing something hard, that's when you know you're really living.
Yeah.
It's the thing worth doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Life is in the hard things.
Yeah.
Life is not in the stuff that you've already mastered. That's kind of boring.
Yeah, it really is for any of us, if we're truly honest with ourselves. Whenever I think about Trinity's approach to science and mathematics, and when I think of that in the context of our culture at large, we kind of alluded to this earlier, but I think there are many that see what happens in our world today, and it's as if like science and math are the only thing. Or if not the only thing, maybe the most important thing. A famous quote that comes to me, not from a great book, but from a movie, from Jurassic Park, is that line by Dr. Ian Malcolm, right?
Yes.
Come to life, made to life by Jeff Goldblum, where, the dinosaurs are running amok and going all over the place. And he looks at them and says, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Right.
And I think that adaptation, that, Jurassic Park being really a more modern take on Frankenstein, and that's the same kinds of themes. And I think that quote brings that to life. I think it adequately describes the balance we hope to provide in science and mathematics with the humanities. And you alluded to this earlier, but I'd love if you could explain a little bit more from your perspectives what you see in students, particularly students who are excellent scientists and mathematicians, yet have the humanities background and training in morality, in communicating ideas. And then Liz, maybe you could address what you see in our graduates, what you see in the type of students we have produced. Because I think that's an important point. Again, going back, I think sometimes we can view these things as so singular when really the type of student and really who God calls us to be is much broader than that.
It's not about the utilitarian aspect of something. So much of our culture is about that, especially when it comes to education. Like you were saying, will it get you this? And it's so beyond that. It's about their capacity and what Jesus will call them to in the future.
Certainly. Well, what I see in my 11th grade AP chemistry students are things that I don't see in my 8th grade logic students. I've actually had the opportunity at Trinity to engage in some educational interactions with the kindergarten, some with some 6th graders, some with 8th graders, and then in the high school as well. What I see happening in these students is the formation of their character and civility in their interactions with each other. They're so literate by the time they get to me in 11th grade, and they're so capable to engage in civil discussion, disagreement, and to be able to work with and sit with a difficult task. That, I think, is what their humanities teachers are really instilling in these kids, is this ability to just be still and to listen well, and then to respond in civility and not in a shrill, knee-jerk, emotional kind of way, which is what I actually have experienced with the 6th graders in some circumstances in my interactions with them. But by the time they get to the 11th grade, their humanities teachers have worked wonderful, miraculous things in them as people, not just as students, but as people.
Yes. I actually had a AP student come up to me last week, and I said, hey, how's it going? And she said, oh, Dr. P, I'm really struggling in AP Chem right now. And I said, good for you. And she said, you sound like Mrs. Leon.
It's like you guys talk or something.
and I said, well, is she right? And I was so touched when she said, she is. And I thought, wow, that's great. I mean, tears came to my eyes because she was getting it. She was understanding the struggle is a beautiful thing.
Would you guys be able to give a brief overview for kind of what our students will go through from a scientific perspective, as far as the approach, the stages as they grow and develop over their time here at Trinity. Because again, I think sometimes there can be a misconception of how we're approaching that. So I would love for you to provide some clarity in that regard.
We were talking earlier for the podcast, and I loved, Sally, what you were saying about what we want to see at the grammar level. And if you could repeat that, I just thought that was great.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, children are naturally curious about the natural world around them. So we just need to fan the flame of wonder and awe that they naturally have. So I would say in lower grammar school, you want to teach lessons that sort of tie into their literature that they're learning, but also can expose them to the beginnings of maybe the life cycle of a plant or the life cycle of a chicken, or if they're learning the Three Little Pigs, teach them a little bit about architecture. I think that's the main thing in the lower grades, is to just fan that flame of wonder and awe that they have already. And then when they get to the middle of grammar school, maybe you want to start introducing them to various types of systems and cycles that we see in the world, and then begin asking them the question, does this seem plausible that this arose from random chance processes, or does it seem more likely that there was intelligence and purpose and precision behind it? And get them to begin to think along those lines. And then math and history and science could all be integrated at that level. And I remember hearing this at a sales conference, that facts tell and stories sell. So you really do want to weave stories of scientists and mathematicians in with your history as you're learning science and so forth. All that can be integrated beautifully in the middle grades as they're learning those things. And then maybe moving on into the middle, like upper elementary and middle school, you want to start teaching experimental design and data collection, and maybe introduce a little bit of rigor in 8th grade, especially when they're learning some physical science. And what we do here in elementary, we expose them to life science, earth science, physical science, really all throughout, and kind of come back and circle back again and repeat and reinforce. But really, I think the rigor needs to start for sure entering in the 8th grade, where they start to kind of have to do some serious figuring out of things, but also fostering that wonder and engagement with the creation and the wonder of the God of the universe. 9th and 10th, I think, is really important. And we do, Dr. Phillips and our other science faculty in the 9th and 10th grade, they do such a fabulous job with lots of theology and apologetics in biology and chemistry in their first years of that. And then significant rigor and choice in 11th and 12th grade. So they have choices. Do I want to pursue AP chemistry? Do I want to go more biology? Am I more interested in anatomy and physiology? These are some choices that they can make. In 12th grade, they have choices of, am I interested in AP physics? Do I want to go more the environmental science route? By the time they get there, they ought to be able, because of their amazing humanities preparation and the rigor we've been integrating in the 9th, 10th, and 11th grades, they ought to be able to navigate these college-level classes and come out really, really strong.
And time again, alumni come back and speak with us about how well prepared they were, not just with the material, but more important, with the ability to learn the material, with the ability and to approach the rigor of university level. And that's what's so rewarding. And I know that is because the humanities are interwoven in with the science. And they talk about how they can think and how they know how to think, and how their new friends at college will complain about a 3-page paper or something. And they're like, well, I did that an hour ago. It took me 30 minutes, So I think that's also a testimony as to the success of what's happening here, is the reports that come back to us.
Yes, it is very encouraging always when we hear from our alumni. But I think as you're speaking today, first of all, just by being with you in this short amount of time, I feel smarter.
You learned some things.
So thank you.
Yeah.
But back to just what I believe happens for our students throughout as Mrs. Leon, you were talking from the beginning through all the way to possibly AP Physics, or it might be environmental science. What our students see through what we're doing or have the ability to do is just see life in its wholeness. Everything is not what I think current education, modern education does, is it compartmentalizes everything. And our students don't view life that way. No. They see it in its whole. Oh gosh, well, what about this? And yes, there's the science, but I can bring about what I think about that or how I would write about that. They just view things more big picture, which I do believe serves them when they leave us.
Yes.
Indefinitely. And as our alumni continue to mature and start their own families and do the next things of life, that has stayed with them.
Yes, indeed. In fact, I just remembered yesterday we went into Santa Barbara to celebrate God's beauty there and stopped off to eat in Carpinteria, and 2 alum who are married with a little baby spotted me and came over and talked to me, and just, it's the normal, typical story, just how Trinity has affected their lives and still continues to. And it's so rewarding with this precious girl holding her precious baby. And I'm like, and they're talking about Trinity.
That's gracious.
A parent who was here. It's great.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up our time, and I know there's so many other things we could talk about, and I just am so grateful for not only how each of you impact students, but really even just afresh hearing the approach and the heart for how you do that. I'm grateful, even as I look to the future, for what my own children can receive, what they are receiving, but what they can receive, because again, it's more about who they are becoming rather than necessarily some boxes they've checked. Because for all our students, we have no clue what the Lord will call them to. And I know they will leave here prepared for whatever that is, in whatever high calling that might be. So before we close, just a couple more questions for you guys. First and foremost, I see you do a lot of fun experiments. Sally, even recently, you guys were doing, I don't even know, you were on the balcony and there were some tubes and all sorts of fun stuff. I would just love for you to share maybe like what's the most fun experiment that you look forward to every year, whether that's because it's the experiment, the experience for the students, whatever that might be. Just would love for you to share that.
Well, that's like asking a parent to pick their favorite child. Because,
Right.
I mean, I like to play, so anything that involves play is my favorite and in the moment. So for the chemistry students, after they take their AP chemistry test, I love the sort of supplemental things that we do. We make cheese, we make ice cream, we make soap.
I was about to say that sounds yummy until you got to soap.
Until we got to soap. Actually, last year we made sauerkraut for the first time. And so I always enjoy those things because it's just fun, and it's actually showing them how chemistry is a part of our kitchen. It's part of
everyday life. Really.
Yeah, right. People have been making soap for thousands of years, and they didn't go to the store and buy it. There is a way to actually make it, and it's clean and it's good. It's better for you. So I love those. But then I like to integrate some sciencey things in my math classes. And so what you saw us doing the other day was a mini Magic Mountain roller coaster building.
That was fun.
And yes, it was a lot of fun. And I do enjoy that because I really don't give them any instruction other than to say, make sure that you're only using blue tape on the school property.
So you're not messing anything up too much.
Right, exactly. And they have to, from their own creativity and experimental trial and error, create a roller coaster that will take them from the top of the balcony down to the bottom, and they can incorporate whatever they want. Maybe they have it leave the track and rejoin the track by falling into a funnel, and then it goes in a totally different direction, or something along those lines. But what I love about that is that they're so wrapped up in their baby that they're making. And they're so just wanting that to work, and they have so many tests that don't work and tests that don't work, and then finally they get one that works, and the exultant yell that comes from them, they can't even stop it. It's an involuntary yeah that comes out of their mouths. And I remember the first time I had the kids doing this, and I was across the playground and they were doing this, and I hear this yell coming from them, and I think to myself, they haven't been so completely unselfconscious since they were 4 years old, and the fort that they built was like everything that they ever desired. I mean, it was a glorious moment of pure exaltation, non-self-conscious. Everything was great. And I love any kind of a activity that I can get my kids doing. It's collaborative, it's creative, and it takes them away from the typical teenage angst. And they are just wrapped up in that playfulness.
In the life sciences, clearly dissections. For some,
It's a highlight for everyone.
it is. For some, it's facing the
aroma,
hard things,
yeah.
right? You know, they don't really want to do it, and then they realize when they've made that cut and they've opened up that mysterious world inside, wow, things are where they're supposed to be. Understanding how things operate and integrate together structurally, the anatomy with the physiology. They're just excited to cut something open, but then it becomes much deeper and much more meaningful as it goes on. So that's clearly the highlight of life sciences.
Yeah. It's as if it's designed or something.
Yeah, it looks like it looks like somebody put all this together, some kind of divine genius.
And what a wonderful conversation.
Yes,
that
indeed.
then is.
Yeah, indeed.
And did you have anyone pass out this year?
No, actually, never. I've had a few who say, "Dr. P, can I go outdoors?" I'm like, "Please, please do, please do. Don't do it in here."
That's great.
Yeah. So, but this year they all embraced it pretty well. I was amazed.
That's great.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, could you both, for those that are interested in maybe this has, sparked some curiosity for them, those who might be interested in doing a little bit more of a deep dive of Trinity's approach to science, even things that have shaped you, what are some resources maybe you could pass along? That could be books, articles, podcasts, whatever that might be helpful to them to continue down this path.
Yeah, well, for myself, I was a part of a group here in this local area that met at a local university called the Bible Science Association. And through that, I was exposed to many books that were apologetic in nature, also involving science and things. And so I would encourage people to look in their own communities and see if there is a Bible Science Association that they could get involved with or attend some of the speeches or lectures or things like that. There are many great authors that are, some from decades before, of course, Henry Morris, probably a really groundbreaking author from the 1960s and 70s. I think it's good to take in information that is theological and that is both young earth and old earth, from the young earth perspective and the old earth perspective, and just take in everything, obviously scripture. Okay, so we want to be comparing what we're hearing from a scientist to what we are reading in scripture and being a discerning reader and picking up on things that are not in alignment, but eat the meat and spit out the bones. So I would encourage that.
To have a broad understanding.
Certainly, yes.
Next year, I will be teaching Christ and Culture. We will be ordering a book of mine, Science Apologetics, Bridging Science and Faith in a Classical Christian Dialogue. So it's not only apologetics with science, but it also shows what a Socratic dialogue looks like, which we do. We teach through asking questions. I'll be happy to order some extras for you, and I think it's a great exposure to like I said, not only science apologetics, but the classical approach to teaching through the Socratic method. But again, that's not any kind of self-plug. I thought of it as I was listening to Sally. That might be a nice book for you. A fun resource that I think would be helpful. Now, I'm a member of the Christian Scientific Association down out of Biola and also a graduate of the Design Institute in Seattle. They've put out some materials, and it's called Science Uprising. And if you go to YouTube and type in Science Uprising, it will give you some wonderful material of how science and theology blend. And also for those who are interested in origin of life, professor down at Rice University, a very brilliant organic chemist called Dr. James Tour.
Yeah, he's fabulous.
He has a great you can subscribe to his YouTube site as well, and he will definitely convince you that, yep, origin of life came from God, and it's pretty scientifically founded, and he does a great job of that. So those would be some resources for people, maybe.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again both for your time and for having this conversation with Mrs. Cato and I. And I know it will be of great inspiration for our families and for those who are just wondering, what does this look like? What do science and math really look like here at Trinity? So again, just thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Different by Design. To learn more about Trinity Classical Academy, visit us at trinityclassicalacademy.com. And for more information about our approach to classical Christian education, be sure to check out the conversations over at the Classical Academy podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe and share. Until next time.